You never wear your mask anymore when we go get groceries.
Welcome to Timesink, the weekly podcast to let you know what's worth sinking your time into. I'm your host, Hercules Mulligan. I'm in it, loving it. Yes, I heard your mother say come again. Just kidding.
How dare you?
Sauce. I'm also joined by Mr. Hummer.
I don't even know what to say there. I don't know what to say.
And
But I like
Tito.
it. My wife's out of town this weekend, so I'm going to be cracking open a few beers and rewatching Hamilton.
We got a great show for you this week. This week, we're going to talk about Apex Legend updates, making your own drive-in theater, The Hunt, Good Boy, Hamilton, of course. And then we're going to dive into Eurovision and how comedians age over time. So I'm going to kick it right off to Hummer.
About freaking time, man. I never thought you were going to shut up.
You were talking a lot.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a quick one because Apex Legends finally did something that they should have done a long time ago, which is to buff, build her up, give her some muscles. Lifeline is good again. So some of the changes. Finally. The biggest change, honestly, is when you go to revive someone, you no longer have to hold over them. She pops her heal drone out. It picks them up for you while you're free to shoot at the enemy. It's a game changer. She is a must play. She is a must be on every team at this point. So maybe some people would say that's overkill on her part, but I think Apex is doing a pretty good job with keeping the game fresh, keeping the updates rolling. We're in the midst of the season, but even bigger news, they did confirm that they will be going cross-platform coming here at the end of this season. So I will finally be able to mash people on console with my PC. Thank you.
You're that guy now.
We're that guy now. But no, even bigger, this weekend was 4th of July. So happy 4th of July. We had some people in from Australia, and one guy, he goes, oh, happy holidays. And we're like, no, this is 4th of July, man. There's no need to, you don't need to be politically correct here. It is the 4th of July.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So, but one of the cool things we did, and I don't know if you guys have ever done this. Have you guys ever watched movies outside, not just on a computer, but actually kind of built your own little movie theater in your backyard?
I have not built a movie theater in my backyard, but I'm interested. I need this how-to.
I do everything possible to not go outside.
Well, this was awesome because not only did we get to watch a movie outside, I built a fire away from the seating area so we could make delicious hot schmoes.
Ooh. Some hot schmoes?
Some hot schmoes. Yeah, no, I mean, it's surprisingly easy. I don't want to say it's cost effective by any means because you do need a projector. But yeah, there's a couple different ways. You just basically we bought a sheet or a shower curtain, a frosted shower curtain, and just hung it up. We put it outside. We put some chairs around it. They got the deck furniture out, and we watched an American classic, The Sandlot.
Oh, nice.
Found out my wife had never seen Sandlot. Almost.
Wow.
Yeah, it was almost instant divorce.
The things you find out after you're married.
But she watched it. She liked it. She understands why it's an American classic. I don't think we've ever rated that movie, but it is one of those rare, old movies that's a 5 for sure. If you haven't watched Sandlot, you don't even have to be a sports fan to like it. It's just great.
I haven't seen it in a while, but I'm sure it holds up.
I am not a sports fan, and I do like it.
That tells you everything.
Well, we also played a video game. We played a drinking game to it, and spoiler, we played one for Hamilton too. With every time the beast growled, we had to take a drink. Oh my Lord! Every time they said George Herman Ruth.
I want to play that drinking game now.
Yeah, I'll pull up the one for when we get into Hamilton talk. But yeah, if you haven't had a chance, if you have a projector, go outside. It's so fun. It's so fun to just put it up there, get the family out there, invite the neighbors to socially distance, watch it behind you. It's a good time.
So 1 out of 5, what's building your own movie theater?
Shaw, it's a 10. It's twice as good as 5.
What if you're like Sauce and you don't like to go outside that much?
I don't want to get sticky.
Yeah, I mean,
It's at night. It's not even sticky anymore.
some people. Never mind. I'm not going to go there. Yeah, I like to go outside. Maybe I'll give it a try. I have wanted to invest in a projector. I truly have wanted to get a projector and set it up inside. But I mean, you could try outside. Why not?
Well, even if you got one inside, you could still easily take it outside. And there's the 2 ways that you can actually set it up. If you get the sheet that's like solid color, like just like basically like a white screen, or you can get one that's like semi-transparent. And if it's semi-transparent, you can actually put the projector behind the screen, and then you project it through the screen and just flip the image. And that's a really cool way to do it. I've done that on a houseboat trip that I do, where we project Jaws onto the screen and we watch Jaws while we're sitting in the lake.
That's appropriate.
It's terrifying.
You got to watch out for those lake sharks.
Hey man, bull sharks can swim up rivers.
Another reason why I don't go on boats.
Lake sharks. But I mean, that's it for me on the hotness, guys. That's it. I'll pull up this drinking game and get this locked and loaded for you.
Yeah. So the last 2 weeks, I saw some random movies. Have you guys heard of The Hunt? Are you familiar with The Hunt at all?
What's it about?
It came out a couple of months ago. I think it was set to be released. So it was set to be released in the fall, and then it got postponed. And then it was set to be released right when quarantine started. And then I think it just got released on Amazon. But the premise is that there are these like liberal elites. It's like kind of political, but not really. The premise is that there are liberal elites. They are super rich, and they kidnap a bunch of like extremely stereotypical conservative people, and they put them on in a big plot of land, and they Hunger Games them basically, and they just like hunt them.
Yeah, I remember seeing a trailer for that.
So it's very like violent and gory and shooty, and it's okay.
Now wait a minute. I think you're talking about is all wrong.
So the premise is like all these very hardcore right-wing conservative people have conspiracy theories about like this group of super rich liberals who hunt people for sport, and then it turns out that they're right. But you find that out in like the first 5 minutes of the movie. It's fun. It was really entertaining. It got postponed in the fall because of the multiple like horrific shootings, not to get too real, that happened back at that time. And then coronavirus happened, so it just got released. So my wife and I watched it. She hated it.
Oh.
Thought it was real dumb. I thought it was fine. It
probably
entertaining.
Conflicted with her highly conservative values, I admit.
Yeah, she was like, this stuff is actually happening out there. Like, they're probably targeting us and watching us through the TV, and they're watching our reactions. So I'm glad you're enjoying it so much, but I'm not. So, it's really contentious over.
It's a plot from the liberal elites. It's from the left. They're having sex with children, and they're taking people and they're hunting them, and they're hunting them Hunger Games style.
You watch the same YouTube videos my wife does.
Classic Hummer Jones.
It kind of works because I like Hunger Games, and she watches far right wing YouTube.
You thought if you married the two together, it'd be cool.
Yeah. So this movie is very silly. It starts out really good, like it starts out very strong, but it weirdly, for as much material as there is, it weirdly kind of dips in the middle, and then the third act is mediocre. I would say it's a 3. If you're very far to the right or very far to the left, you'll probably, I don't know, come up with your own conspiracy theory, make a YouTube video about this. But it's just good fun. If you're not into like extremely campy hardcore violence, also maybe not for you. But if you have already seen Hamilton, already played through The Last of Us, and already watched The Sandlot, maybe look up The Hunt.
What are you gonna give it?
I'll give it a 3 out of 5. It's like if you've got some time, you can watch it.
Now, if you are in fact a conservative, what would you give it?
That feels like a loaded question.
Oh, it totally is, and now you have to answer it.
I'll give it five Trumps down. So, however you want to interpret that.
How much money do you donate to Alex Jones a year?
I just buy his supplements. It makes me mad that I even know.
I gotta confess here. I'm kind of retarded.
Seems like something you would say.
It is something he said.
Anything else you checked out this week, Tito?
I checked out this movie called Good Boy. I'll be brief with this. So, Blumhouse is, I think it's a production company by this producer named Jason Blum, Blumhouse maybe. He's done stuff with, he produced Get Out, he produced The Purge, Insidious, a lot of like scary stuff. And so Blumhouse Films is releasing like a low budget scary movie once a month. Good Boy is, my wife and I watched it because Judy Greer is in it. Judy Greer is in Arrested Development. She's like America's like second lady best friend in all the movies and TV shows. Get a load of these. That if you like Arrested Development. Michael Scott.
Say goodbye to these.
Say goodbye to these. Michael Bluth is threatening me. That sort of jam. The premise is that she's a single lady in her 40s. It's really like dark, the premise actually. She's a single lady in her 40s. She can't have a baby, but she gets a dog to be like her emotional support. And then also, not too much of a spoiler, you find this out maybe in the first 20 minutes. The dog then murders people that that offend her. And she's into it. And so that's what the movie's about. I liked it more than The Hunt. My wife liked it, so that always helps. Big Judy Greer fan, personally. I'll still give it a 3 out of 5. But if you're watch Hamilton, play The Last of Us, watch Sandlot, do all that first. But if you're between The Hunt and Good Boy, I would honestly watch Good Boy. Judy Greer is always charming. The movie takes itself not seriously, and so when the dog does like evil murderous things, it's very silly and funny. And like the people who are in it that the dog kills are just like, they're like objectively bad people. They're like the jerks. They're the stereotypes of jerks that you run into in your life, and you're like, I wouldn't be mad if a dog ate this person. So it's really entertaining. I'll give it a 3 out of 5.
What'd you watch it on?
We watched it on. It's on Hulu. If you have a Hulu subscription, you can watch it.
Do you have my Hulu subscription, or is it your Hulu subscription?
I have my Hulu subscription. I have your YouTube TV subscription, and I have my parents' HBO. And
good.
I have a job.
It takes a village.
Yeah.
Prove it.
So for me, I've been spending a lot of time. I've been sinking a lot of time into this website. It's called the SC.
Does it rhyme with Corn Hub?
Yes, it's exactly what it rhymes with. It's called the SCP Wiki. It's basically a giant made up website for people to go and kind of write short stories, but they're all written under the idea that it's like this secret foundation, kind of like X-Filesy, that researches paranormal things. And so like each one is a SCP. It stands for like secure, contain, protect, and there's thousands of them. So you can like click on one like SCP-3000, and it'll be like, here's its containment procedure, here's what it does. And they're really interesting to read because some are really, really scary, or some are really funny, or some are really thought-provoking, but they're really well written, and they're extremely interesting. So I've just kind of been going through all like the top rated ones and just reading all of them. Like my favorite one is a Tupac CD that one of the tracks changes every time you listen to it, and it helps people solve crime, and it's hilarious.
We get it. You listen to Tupac.
I just want to be cool.
Well,
And
that ship has sailed.
if you've played Control,
Yeah.
if you played the game Control, which is definitely my game of the year for last year, it's kind of like the same thing. And then I highly recommend, I would give it a 5 out of 5, the book, The House of Leaves, which is kind of like a similar style book. So like the book is basically a movie that somebody made, like a kind of like a Blair Witch Project movie that somebody's like recording of their house that has a bunch of anomalies happening in it. Like it keeps warping and changing reality, and rooms disappear and reappear, and then it's bigger on the inside than it should be on the outside, and like horrible things start happening in this house. So like it's a documentary, and then in the book this guy is like analyzing it, and terrible things are happening to him, and like he's going insane. And so it's his manuscript about that movie. And so the main part of the book is a guy who finds that manuscript. So it's like Inception almost, where it's a movie within a book within a script. It's very confusing, but as you read it, like the pages of the book start to kind of like try to like alter your perception of what's happening and alter your perception of reality. So if you're listening to this, you can't see it, but I'm sure you two, like as you read it, like that's one page.
Mm-hmm.
Like the pages start like getting really weird and like changing and like being upside down and like in code, and the book like kind of like starts to try to mess with your brain while you're reading it. And it's
For those of you who are listening, he's just holding up what appears to be a normal Bible.
It changed my life.
I might have to make some phone calls here.
So yeah, so I highly recommend the Book of Genesis. I mean, House of Leaves and the SCP Wiki. Highly recommend. I'm gonna give the SC. I mean, you got to be into like weird paranormal things. I'm not actually into that stuff, but it's so interesting. I can't stop reading it. Yeah, I give those 5s.
Nice.
And
Nice.
You gave that one a 5.
yeah, both 5s.
If you're a hardcore conservative, how would you rate it?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's very anti Jesus, so it's gonna get a 1.
Oh, okay.
Also this week finally got to see, because I'm never gonna see it in person, Hamilton the musical.
Wow.
So I think we all got to see this last week or so, right? We all watched it.
Yeah. We definitely watched that. That was we watched that on the 4th of July.
Yeah, me too. I'm a big musical nerd. I've been in a few musicals in my day. Some of us here were the lead of their high school musicals, and some of us weren't. So I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Some of us were the lead in
some of
musicals.
Some of us weren't even in the auditorium watching the high school musicals.
So you get a real range.
Even though I didn't know you then, Hummer, I'm really upset you didn't support me at the time.
So what did you guys think first?
Yeah, what do you think, Hummer?
I loved it. And I'll say this as kind of like an asterisk to anybody who's going to watch it who hasn't watched it yet. I highly suggest actually turning on the subtitles, even though we speak English and they sing in English. At times, the rapping gets very twista, very fast style,
really fast,
and it can be hard to keep up. So actually, turning on the subtitles is a really good way to kind of keep check of what's going on with the story. But I'm a big history nerd. One of my favorite podcasts of all time is Dan Carlin's Hardcore History.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah,
great one. And so this one was kind of right up my alley. I loved the way that, I mean, there are some places where they did to use some artistic liberties. For instance, Harlem was not a neighborhood in New York. At the time, Hamilton was in New York. For anybody who knows, Harlem is north of Central Park, which New York did not extend. There was no Central Park back then. But
Thomas Jefferson and the Marquis de Lafayette weren't the same person.
yeah, definitely some artistic, but
Spoiler.
we can live with that. But what's cool about it is like, when you look back through, not only did they do a pretty good job of conveying like that Alexander Hamilton really was this like a really conflicted character, a really complicated character that preached a lot of the things that we did today, but also getting to the core that he's an immigrant. He, came to America. He was basically is considered, not necessarily considered, but is in that same kind of conversation as our founding fathers. In a sense, he also created this, what is today our central banking system, had the foresight to see where it's going. That's cool as fuck. But then also the fact that this play was just written because a guy read a book about him. Like he read a book. I don't know his name. I'm terrible with the guy.
Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Yeah, that guy. He read a book about Hamilton and then writes this fantastic play. I liked it. I think it's something you should immediately watch, but also first time watch it with subtitles.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's hard to just suggest it because it's really popular and it's so much has been said about it already. It just is good. My own personal experience watching it, every moment is amazing. The beginning number that sets up all of the exposition is just so well done, like summarizing the events of his childhood and teenage years before he actually gets to America. And I had seen it once before, and I've listened to the soundtrack. I'm a big nerd. I know I've listened to the soundtrack a whole bunch. But
you saw it in person?
I did see it in person. I don't want to big league anybody, but I wasn't. I know.
Well, was it original cast though?
It was not original cast.
Okay.
It was not original. We took Hummer. You're a world traveler. My wife and I went to London last year, and we just asked. We went to the theater one day and asked if they had any like extra tickets for the show, and they just. I guess a couple people had canceled, like called ahead and canceled. Although I don't know why you would do that, and so they had 2 extra ones. So we went and saw it in London. When they came out, and when the spoiler alert at the end of Act 1, when the U.S. wins the Revolutionary War, everyone was like, "Boo!
What?
Boo!"
That's actually incredible. I would rather watch it in that situation and be like the only 2 people in the audience going, "Yeah!"
They didn't boo, but when King George came out, like there was a visceral reaction from the audience. They were like eating it up. A lot of George stands that night. What struck me rewatching it about the beginning number, on top of the exposition, is that the narrator for the show is Aaron Burr. And it just sets up right from the beginning this dichotomy between these 2 characters. And it's such a good way of telling a story where we already know the ending. We know that they have a duel. We know that Aaron Burr kills Alexander Hamilton. But it like sets up so well how they met, crossed paths all throughout their lives, and the way that he writes it, that Lin-Manuel Miranda writes it, is like it's 2 different ways of living your life. So Alexander Hamilton is out there, he's taking risks, he's gambling, he's betting on himself, and Aaron Burr is much more cautious and much more opportunistic, and you can see which lifestyle Lin-Manuel Miranda values because you can see who the show is named after. And so, and I also think like you were saying, Hummer, Alexander Hamilton is not like the cleanest, most straightforward founding father. He's a controversial guy. And I thought the way that they handle the controversies that he dealt with throughout his life were really well thought out, well done. It's just good the whole time.
I thought it was kind of crazy, like, because I forgot that he was never a president when I'm watching it. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, oh, he's on the $20 bill. He's definitely been president. And I looked at my buddy and he goes, no. Just wait. They're going to tell you why he's not president. And then he's like, or you can Google it. And so I Googled it and fell into his trap because that's part of the drinking game is anytime you Googled something, you had to take a shot.
You got you.
Y'all got played.
Y'all got you.
You just got you.
I watched a video about the one of the directors and one of the creators. I forget who it was. It wasn't Lin-Manuel Miranda, talking about all the the subtleties and undertones that they put with the blocking and with the stage, how it's set up, and the rotating stage, and how much little things that you don't realize when you're watching it, but the subtext like really comes out over the whole show. For example, like anytime Aaron Burr is walking somewhere on stage, he only walks in straight lines because that's the way he sees things. He's going from point A to point B, but anytime Hamilton walks, he walks in arcs because he's like analyzing every angle. The way the backgrounds are set up and slow. I don't know if you noticed it, but they're like slowly built up over time. It's supposed to bring about imagery of the immigrants coming over on boats, and so a lot of nautical props and stage backdrops, and basically how America's being built up over the course of the show. It's also the stage is being built up the whole time too, but like very subtly in the background. And a lot of really cool little things like that that I really loved and appreciated. Obviously, the music's amazing. I can't stop thinking about it, I can't get it out of my head. And nobody's mentioned the fact that it's a completely like multiracial cast playing all the all the old white men, the founding fathers, which is amazing. Even though the show's older, it's exactly what everyone needs to see right now.
Yeah, it's. I don't know why I just took a bite of food right now, but
get that drunken noodle, baby.
It's good. I agree with all of that. So not to make too much of a statement, but I'm Hispanic, and I can just say like, I'm old, I have a job, I'm settled in my ways. But it really is inspiring to see that like someone can tell this story and use actors who you typically haven't portrayed the founding fathers in the past to tell such like a powerful and well thought out story. The way that they do it is so basically it's a nice representation that like anybody can accomplish things in America. Everybody belongs. The story of these, former white slave holders can encompass everyone who's like currently in America and is currently an American. That's all I have to say about that from a political standpoint. But but
that's all I gotta say about that.
the music. So going back to the actual way, so the way that it's shot is so gripping. So briefly, I saw it in person. It was really good. But the way they shoot it and seeing it with the original cast, like every one of those actors is so charismatic and is like so good in their role. I've loved Aaron Burr's character. Like seeing him do all of this stuff live is so different from even just listening to the soundtrack. He like punches every line. He's very like villainous and like just such a good foil to Hamilton. It's so I guess like everyone's gonna watch Hamilton if they have the chance to, like especially if it's in person. But like speaking to this particular recording, it just captures you. I had to like turn it off at some point, and it was just hard to walk away because it's gripping. Every scene moves into the next scene, and the way it's shot really makes you feel like you're there.
Daveed Diggs is also amazing.
Daveed Diggs is cool. I really like how the characters in the first act, the same actors, play equally impactful characters in his life in the second act. It's great.
Also, George Washington is amazing. I forget the actor's name.
I forget the actor's name as well.
I didn't know that I needed a big black George Washington in my life.
I didn't know I needed a drooling King George in my life.
The dude who plays King George, Jonathan Groff, he's amazing. He does such a good job as well. The one Caucasian character in the show.
I read in an interview that he's just a spitter, and that's just how he is on stage when he's singing. He just spits.
I was reading that he actually did something to have that like happen more. Like he was drinking a lot of fluids, but they also said he did the show different every time.
Oh, really?
So you never saw the same performance from him because he wanted to kept his own like spin on the character fresh. But I'm like, This is
That's
amazing.
awesome.
They
That
made
guy's-
King George like this flamboyantly gay, spitting, singing king.
Dandy.
Dandy.
He's a dandy lad.
That's how all British royalty behave.
Yes, exactly.
Have you ever heard Prince? I don't know what their names are. Harry talk. It's regal. yeah. It's really really well done, and you can just see. I think so. His first show was called In the Heights, and it was about like a Hispanic neighborhood in the Bronx, and he clearly wrote that from his own experience. And I think it came out in maybe the mid 2000s, like 2008, 2009. And then it took him like 6 or 7 years to write this show. And like you said, Hummer, he read a book about Alexander Hamilton. And before the show came out, like, I'd heard the name. I didn't know what he did. But going through the history of all the stuff that Alexander Hamilton did, it's so impactful. I love movies and shows with this theme, and musicals apparently, where it's just a guy or woman who's just like so strong and talented that nothing is their downfall except themselves. I can only think of one example off the top of my head.
I wonder why that is.
Try to think of an example. There's only one I can think of, and I'm hesitant to say it because it's so lame. But have you guys seen I, Tonya?
No.
It's good. It's really good. It was Margot Robbie. It came out a few years ago. She plays Tanya Harding, and there are not a lot of similarities between the two stories, except that the way they portray Tanya Harding in this movie is that she's so talented. She was so good at what she did that the only thing that was holding her back was like her own poor decisions. And other than that, they're very different, but it seems like that's a similar theme for Hamilton.
Margot Robbie is one of the rare actresses that's a 10 out of 10 in looks and in acting ability.
Acting, just her and Ryan Gosling and some other people.
All right, so what are you guys giving Hamilton? Should people check it out? Doesn't sound like you guys are convincing people to check it
Probably
out.
give it like a 3, like if you got time.
Yeah, just maybe a 2. Like, what am I talking about? Give it a 5. It's on Disney Plus. If you don't have Disney Plus by now, then you know what? And then you don't belong in the realm of streaming conversation to begin with. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah, go listen to Dan Carlin's podcast.
Yeah, go listen to Dan Carlin's podcast on the Huns, and then come back, or maybe the American Experiment, the
blueprint, the blueprint for Armageddon.
Blueprint for Armageddon.
The Huns is the best one for sure.
It might have started out sounding facetious. For being honest, you should probably listen to the Dan Carlin podcast.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to figure out why we're all related, Genghis Khan is definitely the reason why.
If you want to start calling him Genghis Khan and start drinking fine wines.
Actually, I'm like, while we're on the topic of Dan Carlin, there's 2 ways that you can consume his media. The first one is for free on like Apple Podcasts, where you will also conveniently find ours.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to go to his back catalog, actually go to his website or just Google like Dan Carlin and find his website. I think it's like $69, which seems like a lot, but you get his entire catalog of content, and it's hours worth of content. Like each of his podcasts, but it's also nice to see, like, not only are they hour-long podcasts, but then you can go, or 4-hour-long monstrosities, but then you can go back and you can find some of his early ones. Like he talks about who are the most, like, the worst people in history. Like, who are the most evil people in history? And it's a really good one because it's like, obviously, I think everybody's mind immediately goes to Hitler. But he makes the argument that Alexander the Great was one of the most evil people in history. And he makes a very strong case for it. He killed more people than anybody ever has in the entire world. Alexander the Great did.
So far.
So far. But no, it's really cool. It's definitely worth checking out. I think it's definitely worth the $69. It's definitely worth $69.
Hey. This is where I think it's important for the health of our podcast to let you know I'm obligated to say that we are endorsed and sponsored by Dan Carlin and his podcast. And then this is where I'm legally obligated to say that we are not in any way affiliated with Dan Carlin or his podcast.
But you can still give us $69.
We are legally sponsored by 69.
Yeah.
We support 69 because of viewers like you.
A good way to stay limber.
Really glad my parents don't listen to this podcast.
Anyway, Hamilton's 5 out of 5 for me. In case that wasn't clear, go watch it.
So this week's topic, we're going to talk about a little Netflix movie, Eurovision, and how comedians have aged over time. So Tito, this is your brainchild. Why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so I watched Eurovision last week. It's a Will Ferrell movie, and it was pretty funny. The premise is Will Ferrell is Icelandic. His co-star is Rachel McAdams, also Icelandic in this movie. They're old friends, and they have a group, like a musical group where they make beautiful music. And their dream is to be in this European music competition called Eurovision, which I think is a real thing. I did not look it up. And apparently it's a singing competition, and like one musical group from a country wins a year. And so through various hijinks and silliness, Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams get into the competition, and then various misunderstandings ensue. And basically, it was okay. Like, it was kind of funny. It had really bizarre moments. The ending was not that strong. The guy from Downton Abbey, Matthew, who may or may not make it to the end of the series, no spoilers for Downton Abbey, is in the movie, and he's actually like a really good singer. It was entertaining. Just for the movie, I'd also give it a 3. But if we're ranking with our other 3s, I'd probably put it at the lower end of the 3s. And I think you've seen it, Sauce, so you can give me your own opinion in a second. But what it really made me think about as I was watching it was like, I love Will Ferrell. I'll watch any Will Ferrell movie that comes out. Will Ferrell's like Anchorman, Step Brothers, those were formative movies for me back in the day, and I still constantly quote them, and they like kind of taught me what was funny. But Eurovision just is not on that level. And so I was trying to think about, like, obviously this is a pattern. Like, you think Adam Sandler comes to mind. You think about movies that he's made that haven't aged well as he's like kind of produced them. And I was just trying to think about like why that is.
Let me ask you a quick question before we get into that.
Yeah.
What is the movie for both Adams? Like, because I think you're talking about, I think there's at least in our generation, there's a few comedians like this. And then, this is going to be I'm going to leave someone out here, but you look at like Adam Sandler, you look at Will Ferrell, you look at maybe like Vince Vaughn, you look at, I would throw Eddie Murphy into that, or Chris Rock into these people. What is the movie for you of Will Ferrell in particular and Adam Sandler that was the first movie that you're like, okay, I know who this person is?
So, like, their breakout movie?
Yeah,
for you, because like, I mean, looking back on it, you're like, holy cow, International Man of Mysteries, Will Ferrell's in that.
Oh, he is in that. Yeah, he's
right.
In
but that's not what you know him for, right? What's the first movie that you're like, oh, that's the first movie that Will Ferrell, like, you know him. That's where he's from.
Old School.
Yeah. Sauce and I, we came up together. So we watched old. Yeah, I was gonna say Old School as well. That's like where he really came into his own.
As like a lead, I would say. Because I was gonna say Zoolander for me.
He's great in Zoolander too. I mean, he's amazing.
He had a run of like just banger after banger, and then just kind of fell off after the other guys.
Well, I feel like there's a pattern with that. When guys are hot, they're hot, and then what are they doing? They selling out?
I don't know. You tell me.
I want to hear more. What's your opinion
on hot guys?
All right. Well, if we want to talk about hot guys, I know. I mean, like, all right. If you think about it, like you mentioned, like he has these bangers after bangers. Like you're looking at, he goes Old School, Elf, all-time classic in the movie Elf, Anchorman, another all-time classic. Starsky and Hutch, I think he was okay in that, but then Wedding Crashers. Granted, he was definitely not a main character by any means, but his character brought so much to that movie that I think if you didn't have him in it, it's not nearly as funny as what it turns out to be. And then he does start to kind of, for a year, falls off until he gets Ricky Bobby. Blades of Glory
so
sucked.
good.
Blades of Glory, in my opinion, sucked. Semi-Pro was meh. Step Brothers, I thought was good.
I love Step Brothers.
Whoa! What do you mean you thought was good?
What do you mean, Step Brothers? Oh, it was great. Sorry.
Boats
Other guys,
and hoes, man.
hysterical. But I'm starting to see, like, it's like after that, like 2010, for the last decade, he's essentially been, I don't want to say irrelevant, but his movies have just been like remakes, meh, you know.
He kind of just plays the same character now in every movie.
So I was wondering if it's so like Other Guys is the last one I remember that I really, really thought was like funny, classic Will Ferrell. And I was wondering if it's like he busted out so like you just I honestly forgot about several of those, but just like great roles for year after year for such a long time. Does it get tired? I imagine it gets tiring for him. He probably wants to do some other things. He probably wants to vary it a little bit. Is it just because we're used to his style of comedy and then now he's like coming back to it and it's just like time has passed? Is it because he maybe took a little bit of a break? I would argue that Adam Sandler's movies just like his sense of humor and style of humor just did not age very well. Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore are still classics, but like
I liked Waterboy too.
Waterboy is good.
I mean,
Little Nicky was the turning point for me with Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
well, that's what I was like. That's where I was kind of wanting to pull the parallels from these two, and you can kind of look at their careers, and you know, even old school is kind of like childish humor in a sense. It's appealing to 20-somethings, but Adam Sandler's earlier comedies really appealed to more probably teens to young adults. Mm-hmm. And so the aging perspective, like it's good for our generation, but then newer generations don't care. But then eventually you get to this point where like after 50 First Dates, he just starts to do movies that do go nowhere except the Hawaii, or filmed in nowhere in Hawaii. Like, and it just seems that that's kind of like his thing is just, as long as I'm on vacation, I'll do this movie.
Why not? Pay for that vacation.
Yeah, and I don't know. His movies just became, it's stale. His style of humor just like it's like he's still he's growing up. He's becoming this like 40, 50-year-old man who's still telling these really terrible fart jokes that really do work when you're in your 20s. I still laugh at them now, but not when it's coming out of, not when it's being delivered from him.
I don't know. Is it just that we are getting older, or they are getting older? Is there any comedian who's aged and like has been funny, like, from the beginning of the career to like later in their career? The only one person I can think of didn't start in comedy, but is hilarious. One of my favorite comedy actors, Leslie Nielsen. For the he's an amazing straight man. He's the straight man in a ridiculous comedy situation.
Yeah, he's great. I think it's that. I think part of it is things like a younger generation will just have a different sense of humor than us. So like, back when we were in high school, Will Ferrell was the jam. Adam Sandler was hilarious. But I remember being there and people like my parents, this might be blasphemous, I don't know, but my parents and like other people saying Caddyshack was like the funniest movie of all time. And like Animal House was like the funniest movie. And I saw them and they were fine, but I don't know. They just didn't hit me the same way that other people.
Animal House is still, I think, one of the funniest movies. But Caddyshack, I get it. It's a classic. It's one of the first movies that I think my parents let me watch where there's boobs in it. That's why it was amazing.
My mom still doesn't let me watch movies with there are boobs in it. Don't tell her that I've been watching these movies.
Actually, that's a good point, Tito, because my dad's favorite comedy of all time, it's called It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. And if you've ever seen, you guys remember the movie Rat Race?
Yes.
So it's kind of like that. It was kind of like a newer version of it. So it was like I forget what year it was made. It was probably like the 60s or 70s. Let me look it up. But it was basically all the hilarious people of their time, going on like a treasure hunt. And like it was made in 1963. So like, back then that's what they thought was, the funny, and he still thinks it's the funniest thing ever.
Yeah. So I guess it's just, I don't know, not to put too fine a point on this, but it's probably just like a cyclical thing. And Will Ferrell, like you said, does really play the same character. Like in his comedies, he really does play the same characters. I tried to watch Watson and Holmes that he was in with John C. Reilly, and it was like almost unwatchable. Like it was just them trying to recreate. Like they work really well together. Step Brothers is amazing. Talladega Nights I love to this day, but it just didn't work in that newer movie.
Talladega Nights, in my opinion, is an American classic. Like it's one of those movies from a comedy standpoint. It's Wedding Crashers. It's Talladega Nights. I think Step Brothers came close, but didn't quite make the cut as being like that as great as those two movies.
What's wrong with you?
But I think there's
disagree.
Well, what I'm saying is there's these. I think there's like like from a tier 1, Wedding Crashers, Ricky Bobby, tier 2, and actually I'll put Anchorman tier 1 because Anchorman's fantastic. Tier 2 being like Step Brothers and Zoolander. An underrated one is Grandma's Boy.
I love Grandma's Boy. I used to watch this so much in college.
Underrated.
Grandma's Boy.
But a great movie. Like I'm just trying to think of those movies like when we were going to like college and like end of high school, those movies that you're just like, those are the movies you quoted constantly. And even still to this day, you hear people quoting out Ricky Bobby or quoting out Wedding Crashers. And then you do hear to the point where like, I ordered salmon. I said I didn't want salmon. I said it 3 times.
The Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria.
Yeah, I don't like Talladega Nights. I won't watch it. I don't think it's that great. I'm sorry.
Hey, Sauce, here here's something. Picked it up at Target. It was on sale.
And you know what? On top of that, if I go back and watch Wedding Crashers, I just feel like a douchebag. It's like, oh man, this was funny when I was younger, but like now I feel like an asshole for, I don't know. I think it's more so reminding me of that age, which I didn't like.
You were horrible.
Yeah. See?
I was great.
Why were you horrible? Let's hear some stories.
That was a joke.
What is
he was pretty great too.
How horrible were you?
It wasn't horrible.
He was horrible.
I'd like to make him inappropriate jokes at inappropriate times.
You just like had to learn when you weren't allowed to say things.
Wedding Crashers was a movie where my parents, they went on like a date and they called me after the movie and I was in college and they're just like, they called me to be like, you need to go watch this movie. No, like how often do you get like your parents just calling you being like, immediately as soon as they get out there, you'd be like, oh my God, you have to go see this movie. It's so funny. Like we're still laughing our asses off about it. Like my parents, if they call me with that, I'm like, okay, this is gonna be funny because my level of humor, the threshold for what's funny for me is so much lower.
When I was in high school, my mom used to call. I didn't have a cell phone, so my mom used to call my friends if I was out too late to see where I was and tell me to come home. And Frank used to have to lie. But usually I think she would just see right through you.
I got away with it.
Yeah, you're doing fine for yourself. I just love it, Talladega Nights, when he thinks he's on fire and the guys are trying to put him out and he does the windmill, but they can't get close to him, so then they do the windmill because it's the only way to fight.
Help me, Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah.
Help me, Tom Cruise.
Anyway, Eurovision's not as good, I guess, is the main point.
Yeah, I started watching Eurovision. And I got about 30 minutes in, and I was just like, I can't dedicate any more time to this.
Did you get to the sing-off scene? Did you watch Eurovision, Homer?
I have not. So when we had people over, he tried to put it on, and I told him, like, I want to sit through and watch this thing, like, solid. I don't want to keep, like, pausing it and going back to it after a few hours. So I told him to turn it off. I plan on watching it. At this point, I haven't heard any overwhelming reviews from people saying watch it immediately. So it's kind of been, I just keep pushing it off further and further.
Yeah, there's other good content. I mean, you might eventually get to a point where you have some time. Sauce, did you make it to the part where there's like a sing-off scene?
Mm-mm.
It's like you're having a seizure. It's just so bizarre. Anyway,
I always wanted to have one of those.
No, so this is interesting. So I wanted to watch something. I was doing like mindless work, and I wanted to put something on, and so I did. And even during not even 100% watching it, I couldn't. It just felt like I was wasting my time. It wasn't funny. I wasn't interested in the story or the characters. So I put Parks and Rec on because I'm rewatching it, and
Hey, same here.
Awesome. Parks and Rec's the best. But what
I'm almost finished though.
I saw an article that said people with anxiety are more likely to rewatch shows and movies they've already seen because there's no like surprises or they know what's going to happen. So it causes less anxiety. So I thought that was interesting as I was rewatching Parks for like the probably 18th time.
That's a lot.
Parks and Rec's so good.
It is good. I like to watch new stuff, but I mean, I certainly do rewatch.
What I'm finding interesting about Parks and Rec is that.
Wait, is this your first watch through?
No, it's my third, but I believe it's Chuck Daniels. That's his name.
Greg Daniels.
Greg Daniels also did The Office, and it seems like in season 5 there's some banger episodes in season 5, but I feel like there's a lot of episodes that also kind of have like these final season of The Office vibe to it, of like, oh, we're running out of content. What do we do now? And it almost like you do get this whole sense that season 5 is the last season. Like you get that sense that they know ahead of time, right from the get-go, that it's going to be the last season. It's not like the middle of it where it's like, oh, we're not getting renewed. It's like, all right, guys, this is going to be it. And it's great. I love it. I'm taking an ethics class right now, and I made my wife watch a couple episodes because I wanted her to hear how Ron Swanson talked. Because when I read the ethics books, I hear it and I read it in Ron Swanson's voice.
That's amazing.
Was that just a great way to end? I read ethics books in Ron Swanson's voice.
All right, so
let me tell you something here, Leslie. I don't want a birthday party.
Did you get to
all the eggs and bacon?
I really want, and what I don't mean 12 eggs. I mean all the eggs.
Genuine. You don't know genuine?
Genuine is genuine.
All right. Cool. So definitely check out Hamilton is basically what everyone's saying.
In conclusion, go watch Hamilton and go listen to Dan Carlin's podcast.
Yeah, I'm so happy right now. All right, that was this week's episode. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to hit us up on the social medias at Timesink Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and all the others. You can find us on your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you next week.